'90s gets remembered for Pulp Fiction, Schindler's List, and Forrest Gump. Fine. Those are great films. But underneath all that noise, there were 9 films quietly doing something just as interesting that almost nobody remembers anymore. Let's fix that. Jacob's Ladder, 1990. Start here because this one deserves to be in every conversation about '90s cinema and somehow never is. Tim Robbins plays Jacob Singer, a Vietnam veteran living in New York who starts experiencing terrifying hallucinations, demons on the subway, strange figures at parties, his own memories turning against him in ways he can't explain or escape. Adrian Lyne directed this with a visual language that sits somewhere between a nightmare and a memory and never lets you find the line between them. The creature effects, figures with heads vibrating too fast to focus on, wrong bodies in wrong places, were achieved practically, and they still hold up as some of the most genuinely unsettling imagery the decade produced. What makes Jacob's Ladder more than a horror film is the question underneath everything. Is Jacob experiencing something supernatural, or is he a broken man whose mind is finally giving out? The film holds both possibilities simultaneously right up until the ending, and the ending recontextualizes everything you watched in a way that hits completely differently the second time. It influenced every psychological horror film that followed it. Silent Hill, Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan. All of them owe something to what Lyne figured out here. None of them mention it, one of the most important American films of its decade, completely missing from the conversation. The Codes. Diggstown, 1992. A con man gets released from prison and immediately sets up the most ambitious scam of his career. He bets a corrupt small-town businessman that one boxer can beat any 10 fighters the town can produce in a single day. James Woods plays the con man with that specific Woods energy where you can never quite tell if the character is smarter than everyone in the room or just more confident, which turns out to be the same thing. Louis Gossett Jr. plays the boxer. Bruce Dern plays the villain with a quiet, territorial menace that makes him genuinely threatening rather than cartoonish. Michael Ritchie directed this and understood that a great con film has to keep the audience one step behind without making them feel cheated when the reveal lands. Every scene plants something. The rules of the scam keep expanding right up until the moment you realize the film was 3 moves ahead the entire time. It got buried on release in the summer of 1992 against much louder competition and never recovered. Sharp, funny, and constructed with a precision that most thrillers from the same era couldn't touch. If you like The Sting, you need to see this film immediately. Sneakers, 1992. A team of security specialists who make their living breaking into systems get blackmailed by government agents into stealing a mysterious black box that turns out to be capable of breaking any encryption on Earth. Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, Ben Kingsley, River Phoenix, Sidney Poitier, Mary McDonnell, David Strathairn, that cast. In a film almost nobody talks about, Phil Alden Robinson directed this with a lightness that makes the genuinely complicated material feel effortless. The team dynamics are written with enough specificity that each character feels like a real person with a real history rather than a plot function. The blind audio expert played by Strathairn gets a sequence where he navigates an entire building using only sound that is one of the most quietly tense scenes the decade produced. The film understands something about hacking and system security that most films made about technology in the 90s completely missed. That the weakest point in any security system is always the human being operating it. That insight was ahead of its time in 1992 and has only become more accurate since. Funny, tense, and criminally underseen. A perfect Saturday night film that somehow got lost between the bigger films of its summer. Big Night, 1996. 2 Italian immigrant brothers run a restaurant in 1950s New Jersey. The food is extraordinary. And the restaurant is failing because Americans in 1950s New Jersey want spaghetti and meatballs, and the elder brother Primo refuses to compromise his cooking for customers who don't know what they're eating. Stanley Tucci co-directed and co-wrote this and plays the younger brother Secondo, the one who handles the business side, the one who understands that art without an audience is just a man cooking alone. Tony Shalhoub plays Primo with a fierce, almost religious dedication to his craft that makes him simultaneously the most admirable and most frustrating character in the film. The climactic meal, a feast built around a timpano, a massive drum-shaped pasta dish that takes days to prepare, is one of the great food sequences in cinema. The camera treats the food with the same reverence the characters do, and by the time it arrives at the table, you understand completely why Primo refuses to make anything less. The final scene. 3 minutes, no dialogue. Just two brothers in a kitchen making eggs the morning after everything fell apart. It's one of the most quietly devastating endings of the decade, and it cost the film nothing to make and everything to watch. A small film about enormous things: food, failure, brotherhood, the gap between what we make and what the world is willing to receive. Sugar Hill, 1993. Wesley Snipes plays Romello Doug, a Harlem drug dealer trying to get out of the business while his brother keeps pulling him back in. Clarence Williams III plays their father, a broken former addict the brothers have been supporting their entire lives. Leon Ichazo directed this and resisted every temptation to make it flashy. The Harlem he shoots is cold, specific, and weighted with history. The drug trade in this film isn't glamorized or condemned. It's just shown as a system that certain people get born into, and the exits are narrow and expensive, and not everyone makes it through. Snipes is doing some of the best work of his career here, which is saying something given what his career contained. The relationship between the two brothers, the one trying to leave and the one who can't imagine leaving, is written with enough complexity that neither of them is simply right or simply wrong. It came out the same year as Carlito's Way and got completely overshadowed. Same themes, similar territory, a fraction of the attention. The people who found it called it the better film. They weren't wrong. Bringing Out the Dead, 1999. Martin Scorsese, Paul Schrader screenplay. Nicolas Cage is a burned-out New York paramedic working night shifts in Hell's Kitchen in the early 90s, haunted by the ghost of a girl he couldn't save. This is the film that completes Scorsese's New York trilogy alongside Taxi Driver and After Hours, and almost nobody places it in that company because almost nobody saw it. Cage plays Frank Pierce with a hollowed-out exhaustion that is one of his most controlled and most devastating performances. The night shifts blur together. The city looks like it's already on fire. Tom Sizemore, Ving Rhames, and John Goodman play as rotating partners, and each of them represents a different way of surviving a job that takes something from you every single night. Scorsese shoots New York with the same kinetic, almost hallucinatory energy as Taxi Driver, but where Travis Bickle was building toward explosion, Frank Pierce is just trying to stay together long enough to feel something again. It made $16 million. Scorsese coming off Kundun, Cage coming off a string of massive hits, and the film disappeared in 2 weeks. One of the great American films of the 90s, sitting in a blind spot that makes no sense given who made it. Go, 1999. 3 intersecting stories set over one night in Los Angeles and Las Vegas. A supermarket checkout girl making a drug deal to cover her rent. 2 actors getting pulled into a police sting. A British guy in Las Vegas making increasingly bad decisions with increasingly serious consequences. Doug Liman directed this 1 year after Swingers and 2 years before The Bourne Identity, and it sits right in the middle of his career as the film that showed exactly what he could do when the budget gave him room. The structure keeps looping back on itself, showing the same night from 3 different angles, and every time the story resets, you see something in the previous version you missed. The editing is sharp enough that the structural trick never feels like a gimmick. It's genuinely the only way to tell a story where 3 separate disasters keep nearly intersecting. Sarah Polley, Katie Holmes, Jay Moore, Timothy Oliphant, William Fichtner. Everyone is doing exactly what the film needs. The Las Vegas sequence involving a rave, a car, and a very bad morning after is one of the funniest extended sequences of the decade. It came out 3 months after Go and got called a Pulp Fiction knockoff by critics who were too focused on the structure to look at what was inside it. It's better than that dismissal, and always was. Frametime is genuinely losing its mind trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We are so close right now it hurts. If you've been watching this whole video and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please just do it right now. 2 seconds. That's all it takes. It means everything. The City of Lost Children, 1995. Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Marc Caro, the same team that made Delicatessen 3 years earlier. A French film set in a diesel punk coastal city where a scientist who cannot dream is kidnapping children to steal their dreams. Ron Perlman plays one, a carnival strongman searching for his kidnapped little brother, and the film surrounds him with a cast of characters that includes a cult of blind men sharing a single mechanical eye, a criminal organization run by a woman and staffed entirely by orphan children, and a pair of Siamese twins who operate as a hive mind. Jeunet and Caro build this world with a density and specificity that makes every frame feel overstuffed with detail that rewards rewatching. The production design is extraordinary. Every object looks like it was built by hand by someone with a very specific and slightly wrong idea of how the world should work. It's funny, dark, visually overwhelming, and emotionally sincere underneath all the strange machinery. The relationship between one and the young girl Mieta, who helps him find his brother, is written with enough care that when the film earns its ending, it lands with full weight. Jeunet went on to make Amélie, which everyone saw. City of Lost Children is what he made before that, and it's just as good, and a fraction of the audience ever found it. Barton Fink, 1991. Joel and Ethan Coen. John Turturro as a New York playwright in 1941 who goes to Hollywood to write a wrestling picture for a major studio, checks into a decaying hotel, and slowly loses his mind. The Coens won the Palme d'Or at Cannes for this, every major award. And it still has a fraction of the audience of Fargo or No Country for Old Men because it's the Coen brothers film that refuses to be comfortable, even by their standards. John Goodman plays Charlie Meadows, the insurance salesman in the next room, with a warmth that keeps curdling at the edges into something you can't quite name. The hotel itself, the Hotel Earl, wallpaper peeling in the heat, a single shoe in the hallway that never moves, is one of the great locations in American cinema. It's not just a setting. It's a state of mind that Barton is sinking into one page of bad screenplay at a time. The film is about the gap between artistic pretension and actual creative work. About a man who claims to write for the common man and has never listened to one. About what happens when the stories we tell about ourselves stop being able to hold the weight of what we actually are. Dense, strange, and completely essential. The Coen brothers at their most uncompromising. The film that won everything and still got lost in the conversation about their work. 30 years later, it deserves a much louder second look. 9 films, all from the 90s, all still waiting for the audience they always deserved. Hit like, subscribe to Frame Time. We keep going back so you don't have to start from scratch.